honestly, she has a mentality, I call it the eye of the tiger. When you see her come in, she ran for mayor as well. She has multiple businesses in different sectors, and honestly, just the character on this woman is very, very strong. So I want you guys in this room to give a huge, warm welcome to Miranda Rocca Churchelli, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Connor, for that wonderful introduction. It's very humbling. And thank you to each and every one of you who've chosen to come here tonight and to truly elevate your life, because that takes a great deal of courage. Now, what I have to offer you tonight, now I know you've heard many stories and you're going to hear some more epic and wonderful journeys, is what I believe is really the missing piece that's going to bring this all together tonight. So I just need a little bit of excitement. So who's ready to truly learn what that last piece of the puzzle that's going to allow you to walk away tonight and truly be irreplaceable? I need a little bit of energy. Who's ready for that? I know some people had the break and you might have fell asleep, so I like the energy. Thank you for that. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about the power of authenticity. And what we're going to do is we're going to dig a little bit deeper and we're going to talk about the science of authenticity. Because I truly believe that if you can understand the truth behind authenticity, then you truly are going to become irreplaceable. Thank you. It's very exciting, you'll see. So the one thing, you've heard it tonight, the one thing that truly differentiates us from AI is our emotions. You see, AI is incredibly objective. It's reliant on algorithm and math and science, much like the lens of these cameras. It doesn't choose what it captures and reflects. It's us humans that, well, we really mess things up, right, with our feelings. And feelings are incredibly important. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. So, authenticity is an emotional state. And to better understand authenticity, then we have to understand our emotions. And most people understand emotions as those feelings we get and we experience in our connection with people and things in the world around us. And if we take it one step, even at the most simplistic level, emotional states are truly energy states. And you know this because you can feel people's energy. Have you ever walked in a room before anyone even said anything to you and you immediately make the decision to not talk to them and avoid them that day? You can feel their energy. And much like when you walked in the room tonight, you could feel the energy. And so we can feel people's energy and we can also feel our own energy. And authenticity is a state of energy because it's an emotional state. So if we're going to understand emotions, then we have to dig a little bit deeper and better understand energy. And I think at this point in time, everyone understands that what energy really is when things are in motion. And everything is composed of teeny tiny particles that are in a constant state of flux and constant state of motion. And in those tiny vibrations, they're giving off energy waves. And those energy waves can be measured and captured and calculated. And everything is composed of these teeny tiny atoms, from every single person here to the stage I'm standing on. And everything, because it's in a state of flux and motion, is constantly giving out energy. We're emitting and impressing and imposing our energy upon the world. Now, because of how those atoms come together, everything has almost like a different energy fingerprint of sort. The energy this stage is giving off is quite different than the energy I'm giving off. Now, the key to understand at this point is that emotional states are energy states. Is everybody with me so far? Sort of? Yeah? Okay. So if you can understand that emotional states are states of energy, then you can understand the work of Dr. Hawkins. Much of my practice is reliant on his work because it makes a great deal of scientific sense. And what they were able to do is they were able to calibrate each emotional state and assign a quantitative frequency to each emotional state. Now, the way they did this was pretty cool. So much like an EEG and an ECG, there we go. Much like an EEG and an ECG that can detect and read the frequencies from your heart and your brain, we can detect the frequencies of your muscle twitches. Because as your muscle twitches, it gives off a certain energy frequency that can be measured. And so what they found is that when your body is in a state of truth, it's incredibly strong. And when your body is in a state of untruth, so it knows that whatever it's experiencing or feeling is not truth, it goes weak. And we've also heard that in some of the stories that you've heard tonight, that when you're in a certain mindset and you're in a certain vibrational state, that your body can go strong or it can go weak. And your body is incredibly objective, much like AI, and it responds to the program that's being downloaded. And so one of the studies that they did with impeccable accuracy is that they would hook people up to this device, and they would give the participants an envelope filled with sugar. And they would make the statement that you're holding an envelope filled with vitamin C. Every single time the body went weak. And what this told them is that your body holds truth much like a lie detector test. And you can't lie to your body. And you especially can't lie to your body when it comes to energy, because energy is quantifiable and it will impress upon. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So what they did is they were able to calibrate all the emotional states and created the map of consciousness. Now this is demonstrated to you in a linear way because it's quantifiable. And everything's measured in hertz, and that's a unit of energy. And now these, again, are kind of tiny, but this is like 20 times 10 to the power of 100. So we're talking about teeny tiny increments of energy. But much like, the radio waves that are traveling through us right now that are making our cell phones work, you can't see them, but you can definitely measure them. And so what they found is that shame is the lowest emotional state that a human being can feel. And that's the feeling of not feeling worthy, of not being good enough. It's really the death of the soul. And as you increase your vibrational state, you change your emotional state. And now we're not going to go through the anatomy of every emotion. I'll spare you that tonight. But what we will do, and what's important to note, is that when you get to courage, courage is the first emotional state that vibrates in a positive paradigm. And this is where your world starts to change. And this is where you start to experience, in essence, heaven on earth, because everything starts to vibrate differently at this level. Now, because it's shown to you in a linear way, of course, we're not linear beings. We're quite complicated, and we do tend to complicate things. And we're very much like an onion with the layers. And in each of the layers of our life, we operate at different emotional states. So, for example, in one relationship, you might be predominantly in a state of anger, whereas in another relationship, you might be predominantly in a state of happiness. So for every interaction you have in your life, you operate at a different emotional state. Now, if we were to take the sum total of all your layers, of all the energy frequencies at each of those emotional states in each of those layers, you would have basically a sum total, an energetic field that you emit onto the world. This is also known as your aura, and some people who are talented and clairvoyant can see the colors of your aura. And the reason why they can see those colors is because colors also are composed of atoms that vibrate at certain frequencies that correlate with the frequencies of emotional state. So it's not a linear process, and each person does have that energetic field, that sum total that they emit. And what is known is that almost 90% of the world that's been calibrated vibrates below the level of courage. And only about 3% of the known humans to have ever walked this planet, and we're talking as a sum total. So that means in each of those layers of their onions, they vibrate at a state of unconditional love. So that relationship where you vibrate with anger, they're at a state of unconditional love. Only 3%, and we're talking about the Jesuses, the Buddha, the Gandhi, operate above the level of reason. That's quite high up. And as we progress, we see that the highest state of emotion that we can feel is enlightenment. And so the spectrum is quite broad, but also very specific. And mathematically, for every one person that vibrates at a state of unconditional love, that's your sum total, that means every single layer in your life is in a state of unconditional love, it equates for 750,000 people that operate below the level of courage. And that's just simple math. But that also demonstrates the power in raising your vibration and truly vibrating from the highest possible way. Now, to take this one step further, for those of you who still believe that emotions are just kind of those things that you feel and kind of get in the way of things, well, when we look at this diagram, there is an impact of our emotional state. And we saw that, and we heard it tonight with some of the stories, and I'm sure you'll hear it again with some other stories, is that when you're in a certain mindset, you are vibrating at a certain emotional state, and therefore you have a certain energy state. And that energy impresses upon your body. And if you don't release certain energy states, such as shame and anger and all the lower ones, and you hold those in your body, over time, that energy, because it's energy, it can't be created or destroyed, it's just transferred from one form to another. It's Einstein's basic principle. It starts to impress upon your physical body. And you don't usually pay attention to this because as humans, we're not always consciously aware to our emotional states. But what happens is you start to break down and you start to get sick. And parts of your body start to get sore and you progress that way without realizing that the key here is to be able to release that energy, because over time, it will make you sick. Now, at the opposite end, when you look at happiness and you look at love, that energy also impresses upon your body in a way that is obviously favorable. So, let's bring it back to authenticity. So where does authenticity lie in all of this? Well, on the map of consciousness, authenticity lies between integrity and peace. That's between 350 and 600. That's pretty high up on the scale. And so the major question really is, how do we get here? How do we get to authenticity? Well, there's a little bit of bad news for everybody, because there's no easy way of doing this. And so I'm going to read this quote from the late Carl Jung. Real liberation comes not from glossing over or repressing painful states of feeling, but only from experiencing them fully. So here's the kicker, and I always get asked, what's the fast pass, Miranda? I just want to get there. Unfortunately, if you've been suppressing, denying, and just not looking at those emotions, and I understand society and the world tells you don't feel, but if you've been holding on to that anger, that shame, that guilt, remember your body knows truth. So you can lie and say, I'm not angry, I'm not feeling guilty, I'm not feeling this, but your body will tell you the truth, because it can't lie. It absolutely only knows truth and untruth. And so the only way to truly ascend and get to that place of authenticity, which as we can see is pretty high up on the scale, you have to be willing to sit with all those lower emotions that you have probably not wanted to look at for most of your life. Because the only way to release those energy states is you have to be willing to sit with them and feel them. The only way to heal is to feel. And it's absolutely the only way. And I'm smiling because I've done it and it's not fun. And it's a lifetime. It's just like working out. It has to be part of your lifestyle. If you truly want to get to a place of authenticity, you have to be willing to look at your anger, to look at your grief, and you have to be willing to feel it so that you can release it. And you'll know because you'll feel good. Because your body knows truth. You know when you're feeling good. You know when something's the right direction and something's the wrong direction. Because it feels right. And the world we live in, it wants to keep you in that lower state. It wants to keep you below the level of courage. Because when you're below the level of courage, well, you're a moneymaker for the corporations. Because you're getting sick, you lack awareness, you're susceptible to manipulation, and you operate from a place of ego. And as we saw, as you raise your vibration, you become so much more powerful. And you equate for so many people in this world that maybe don't have the capacity to heal. And it's probably the greatest gift you can give yourself and this world, to heal those lower and feel those lower, awful, horrible feelings so that you can rise above. You have to be willing to walk with your pain in order to ascend. We've seen it in religious literature, we've seen it in ancient times, and over again, it is the only way to truly get to a place where you can be authentic. And so, in concluding tonight, I am going to leave you with one important question. And the important question is, are you willing to walk with your pain, to truly be authentic, and truly be irreplaceable? And only you get to make this decision. And it's not an easy one. It's not. However, if you want to come from a place of power and truly embrace authenticity and never be irreplaceable, you will choose to feel your pain so that you can lift yourself up and come from a place of authenticity. Thank you, everyone.